hold your own, but also be open to the perspectives of others. There might be challenges that come at you. You have
Right.
to accept that they're there and find
Hmm.
a way through them. Going from hero to zero is a really fast ride and it's not fun. The culture will develop either by design or by default. This is kindergarten stuff. You're going to have steps forward, but you're also going to have steps backwards. It's not a straight line. The work of culture is not something that you just do and finish. The investment in culture is really about the long game, and
Yeah.
it's worth every investment you can make.
Hello and welcome to the Success Differently podcast. My name is Michelle Sorgaroli and I'm your host today, and we are being joined by our very special guest, Shannon Pearson. Shannon is a mediator, a conflict resolution trainer, founder of ReformIQ, and a featured speaker at TEDx Surrey. With a background in guiding high-stakes teams, especially in construction and manufacturing, Shannon helps turn damaging workplace tension into productive performance and meaningful change. Guided by her values like courage, curiosity, and connection, Shannon's passion for this work actually started pretty early. From 8 years old, is my understanding, she grew up navigating some pretty intense family tension, and that really shaped her initial tendency, if you will, to avoid it. But since then, she learned that by avoiding tension, it actually holds us back. And today, she empowers others to navigate conflict with empathy and clarity. And Shannon, I couldn't be more excited about this conversation. Welcome. Thank
Oh,
you for
thank
joining us
you.
today.
What a great introduction.
Well, thank you. It's fun to introduce such a special guest with so
Yeah.
much talent. So
Thanks.
super fun. So
Yeah.
let's just dig right in. Like we've
Mhm.
touched on just here now, we've touched on you've built your career on helping others navigate conflict. And I'd love
Mhm.
to hear just a little bit what drew you into such an interesting line of work. Most
Yeah.
people avoid tension, which we made that point earlier.
Yeah. And that was very much where I was at for
Mm.
years. It really was an awareness piece of when you figure out that you're the common denominator and all the things that
Oh,
aren't quite working. It's a moment where you can go one way or the other. And I'm
yeah.
very grateful and thankful that I had support in my life to gently prop me up to really go after the conflict. And by go after it, I mean embrace it. I
Hmm.
don't mean win it. I don't mean, make other people suffer as a result of it. It's quite the opposite.
Hmm.
And that is really what took me down that path of going, oh, it's actually a source of finding peace, not
Mm.
something you win.
Mm. A source of finding peace. I love that. You
Mhm.
said, um, you said there was a moment where you could go one way or another.
Yeah.
Is that a moment that you might be willing to share with us? What happened there, or what comes back for you?
Well, what comes back is a common theme. It's not any one event. It's just
Nice.
recognizing that if you continue to do what you've always done, you're going to keep, I think that's a quote from somewhere, you'll keep getting the same outcome.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it through the lens of helping companies, consulting and parachuting in, saying, here's the trouble spots, here's where it's the struggle is showing up from an observation standpoint.
Mm.
And when you recognize that that's also showing up personally in your own life, that's the game changer. That's where you go, oh, oh, it's me. Got it. Yeah.
Isn't that true? Hey,
Yeah.
sometimes when we're consulting, we are consulting on challenges that when we
Yeah.
first start, we may not be aware that these are things we're facing as well. And then one day,
Yeah.
a coin drops. I'm like, wait,
Wait. Oh,
this might apply to
oh.
me too.
Yeah. No wonder I can see it so clearly.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you didn't start in conflict, navigating conflict. That probably wasn't your focus. When you were early in your career, what were you
Mhm.
doing when you first started out? Were you always in consulting or where did it
No,
begin?
no, I started in the financial industry. I became an investment advisor. And that was really a result of, and this really speaks to that conflict side in my life. Somebody said, there's no way you'll make it. There's no way
Mm,
you'll be able to do this. And it just lit a fire in me. And it was very much that, oh, yeah, watch this kind of response.
mm,
Um, and that served me really well. And I think that that is also something that is a delicate balance between really leaning into that feisty, get after it kind of hustle. However, finding the balance to also soften and be
Mm,
willing to be vulnerable enough to step into spaces that are very tense and very aggressive in a lot of cases, but still hold your own, like hold your space and hold your boundaries and do everything that you need to do to be yourself in that moment, but also be open to the perspectives of others.
hmm
It's that is the game changer. So coming from really a stockbroker environment
mm,
back in the, dare I say, early 2000s, um, and learning there's a lot in the industry that was changing at that time.
yeah.
I was in a pretty, fairly aggressive but highly competitive space.
hmm
So you did have to claim your seat at the table, and that brought a lot of that conflict nature up. So you're fighting for your seat constantly. I had a good run. I learned a ton during those years, but I
Mm,
did transition out of that with the intention of working with business owners to help them improve how they operate. And that's always the joke I tell that funnily enough, I thought surely if you just go into a business and give all the right processes and procedures and policies, give people the things to follow,
right, the tools.
surely they will follow. And they don't. So that was my awareness piece after a few years going, if people aren't happy with
Hmm
what they're doing, if they don't feel a connection to the work that they're doing or the purpose they serve in the organization, they're not going to perform.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
that's
interesting.
really where the shift started with me to work on culture. And
Hmm
as I kept digging into culture and loving it, I started to see this recurring theme that drew me in, which is really when people aren't happy, they're gonna get feisty. They're gonna
hmm
say the things that upset other people or deflect and avoid things that don't get resolved, and therefore productivity suffers. So that's all conflict. It's all part of
Yeah.
that same package.
So interesting when you're going back to your financial years,
Yeah.
in you said an aggressive and competitive environment.
hmm
You said when people aren't happy, they get feisty.
hmm
What do you, looking back on that time in
hmm
your career and looking at, you said you were fighting for your own space.
hmm
What's the learning there that you've extracted, understanding what that aggressive and competitive space taught you?
To be quite blunt, and this is not something that I would necessarily coach with people, but
Mm,
I was very much raised in an environment of you take care of you. Nobody else is going to take care of you. And having that ingrained in me at a very young age, um, in the moment back in the when I started in that industry, I was scared of everything because I really bit off probably more than I could chew.
mm,
And it was more of a fake it till you feel it kind of scenario. But I did it. And I was proud that I got my securities license. And I was proud that I um, did the work that I needed to do. The takeaway, the learning from that is when you have space, it is yours. You have to take it. You just being there and doing what it is that you need to do, there's nothing to conquer.
mm.
Do the work and be yourself
Yeah.
and be open to the fact that there might be differences. There might be challenges that come at you.
hmm
You don't have to fight them. You
Right.
have to accept that they're there and find
hmm
a way through them.
hmm
And I think that is the takeaway I can speak to now.
Right.
You know, the years back, looking at the time and the experience I had had going into that, I was fighting everything,
Isn't that
absolutely
interesting,
everything.
eh?
Mhm.
I always find this curious when we reflect back on our story. And from, as you said, when you were a little girl, you
Mhm.
were learning to avoid conflict. And then you
Yeah.
found yourself in your career. And I'm assuming this was your first career or very among the
Very
financial,
early.
very, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, fighting for your space
Yeah.
and putting yourself in a highly aggressive and competitive environment that actually had tension kind of built in.
Mhm. Yep, it did.
Isn't that funny how we spend so much of our journey, we have these polarizing moments, right? Where
Oh,
we, do you see it, what you're
oh,
smiling, so I want to hear
so
what you're
true.
thinking here.
Yeah, it's so true. The polarizing moments, and I think that that's a great way to put a lot of the work that I've experienced and the growth that I've um, somewhat tackled throughout those years is it is polarizing. So,
Mhm.
you go through that awareness piece where work is work and home is home, and you're two different, beings in those different spaces. And then you realize, oh, well, that's not very authentic. And I want to be authentic, but I also want to have boundaries. And how do you strike that balance to be authentically yourself, but also not give away that very
Right.
intimate side of yourself? And be so vulnerable that now you're just this great big beating heart out in the world. That that growth or that evolution
Hmm.
is really personal, and
Yeah.
everybody goes through it at a different pace. And it's a choice. That's the
Hmm.
other side of it, that from my experience and what I believe, it's a choice. You cannot force a person into that evolution of self. It's deeply personal and it's not light work.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Um, Although sometimes the universe can force us to
Oh
learn.
yeah.
So
The
that's
signs are
just like,
there.
don't do that. Sometimes that happens, but
Yeah, the
just,
lessons will show
yeah,
up.
they
It's
will
just,
show up.
will you
Yes.
see them? And when you do see them, how do you choose to deal with them?
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Right?
so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I'm thinking about here is as you were learning to avoid conflict as a young woman, a little girl, if you will,
Yeah. Mhm.
your younger years, and then finding yourself on the other end of that spectrum where you were forcing to advocate and forcing to be in the conflict and really find your voice. I
Mhm.
find that really interesting because when we experience the polar opposites, and in a sense, I would suggest that perhaps that they were to a
Mhm.
degree. Is that an assumption or is that a fairly accurate
That
statement for
is
you?
accurate. Yeah.
Okay. So when we're in those opposite ends, it actually gives us so much depth to draw on. I like to do this all the time. I'm like the two ends of the spectrum, and somehow we find our way closer to the middle, right? So when you were in that space, no one's going to take care of you. You need to take care of yourself. You're going to advocate.
Yeah.
What caused you to make a change? And was that change what inspired you to leave the industry? And where did
Mhm.
you go next?
Oh, that is I here's a little piece of insider information about me. I make deals with myself, and I have for as long as I can remember. And one of the deals I had when I was in that business was I will stay unless I hate it. And if I hate it, I have to leave. It's a very lucrative career,
Hmm.
um, but it can be quite lonely. That was my experience anyway.
Hmm.
And I remember walking into the office one day, and under my breath, I said something to the effect of, I can't do this anymore. And I still remember what I was wearing. I remember where I was in the hallway. I remember my office was the first door on the left. And I just walked in and put my briefcase down and thought, I, I have to leave. And the reason I made that deal with myself when I first started was I was never the biggest or the best or any of that.
Mm.
I knew how to work the business that I had.
Yeah.
And I always considered it too important of a role to hold people's wealth and do transactions on their behalf, regardless of how much or how little money I made from it. It was an important function.
Hmm.
And if I didn't care, I needed to give it to somebody that did
Mm.
because you would lose everything anyway because
Yeah.
you would not pay attention, you would miss the marks in the market, you would it would not end well for anybody. So
Yeah.
that was where I made the deal. And it was years later that I actually was in that position and thought, oh, okay.
I
And
have
within
to.
2 weeks, it was done.
Wow. Shannon, what were you so clearly leaving in
Mm.
that moment when you just knew?
It didn't really light me up. It didn't like I love business. I love problems to be solved, and I really genuinely care about people.
Mm.
And so when you're helping people achieve these goals and you double their investment or whatever the case is, or they just appreciate you being on the other end of the phone, I felt like I mattered.
Mm-hmm.
When I felt like I didn't matter, and part of that was probably the conditions of the economy, part of it was just
Mm.
the nature. The business is very transactional anyway. What I was leaving was really not having a purpose, not being connected to anything. Um,
Mm.
and I use this phrase, I've used it over different times in my life, but going from hero to zero is a really fast ride and it's not fun.
That's
So
a good one, yeah.
yeah, when you are killing it and you're out there and you're doing good work and it can change with the snap of a finger, um, it is not a fun ride. And that not knowing every day, am I going to be in the good books or the bad
Mm.
books? It just didn't really fill me up at all. So I was leaving the hustle. I was leaving you know, having to have this exterior, this almost like a protective armor on, so that when I did go from hero to zero, it was going to be okay. I could have a crash landing and I'd still be okay. But
Interesting.
that's what I left. I left that thankless role that I had no control over whether I was
Mm-hmm.
going to be in
Mm-hmm.
favor or not in favor. And in that business, when you're not in favor, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no wiggle room there.
Very little. There
Yeah.
can be, yeah. Protective armor.
Mm.
What did you mean by that?
Very much like what I was speaking to earlier about you have this idea of work is work and life is life, and you keep the two separate. And in an environment that is highly competitive, I did feel like I had to put an armor on. I didn't want to let people too close to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
The genuine care, because there's lots of different sayings about business is business and
Mm-hmm.
it's not personal and all those things. Well, I don't know of much else that's more personal than people's money.
Right.
So I could never quite connect those
Ah.
two personas. So my answer to that was to just armor up and be okay with doing what I needed to do. But again, being conflict avoidant for years, I was also protecting myself from being targeted or being not literally attacked by any stretch, but
Right.
having
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that attack on my credibility, my professionalism, my competence. It's all you put the armor on to protect yourself.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's just so common. We see that so often, a protective armor, and it looks
yeah,
different for different people.
it does.
But ultimately, I think what you're speaking to is around our competence,
Yeah.
credibility, how, our value system, perhaps. There's a
Mhm.
bunch of things that are being protected behind that
Well,
feel vulnerable. Is that right? Is that what I'm
I
hearing?
agree. I also
Mm.
see that as that is the first awareness piece in resolving conflict is you need to see what people are fighting for. What are they protecting?
Mm.
What is it that really matters in a given moment? Because when the the nostrils are flaring or the cheeks are flushing or whatever it is that's going on, it could be that extreme or it could also be the passive aggressive. It could be
Yeah.
the avoidance itself. It's still all part of the same program, which
Hmm.
is I'm hurt or I'm fearful of being hurt. My security is coming into question. So I'm just going
Hmm.
to respond. This is a response system, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very common. And then once you really can actually get in there, when you can actually scratch the surface, some of the most aggressive or seemingly aggressive people are actually quite kind and quite gentle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a lot more to fight for sometimes.
I think so.
sometimes in terms
I
of
think so.
their life experience, and that protective armor's thick.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
they've created this a lot of times, especially in trades, you're working with people that
Mm,
have this idea of I'm a X, like fill in the blank. I'm a
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I present as this person.
Hmm.
And when that gets challenged in any way, it's almost like a puffer fish, right?
Right.
They those tendencies show up that much more.
Hmm.
Um, but I've experienced it quite often where when you actually have to say, I see you and I see your
Mm,
protection. We're just going to put it to the side for a second because here's what has to be handled or dealt
mm,
with. And then you get the human. And
mhm.
it's really sometimes it's really hard because you got to walk them through this really uncomfortable moment. And some take it with grace and some do not. And then
Mhm.
that nature becomes even bigger. And that's the hard lifting for sure.
I'm sensing that in you. I can feel it as you're
Yeah.
speaking. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Um, so the pieces that I'm getting here, the phrase you used, which I sort of paid attention to, was I present as this person.
Yeah.
When what I'm hearing is that when we present, there's a persona that we are essentially protecting, or
Yeah.
perhaps that's our authentic self, but we're
Mhm.
um, presenting in a certain way. And if that is threatened in any way, we can sometimes not respond in positive ways.
Yeah. Or there, have you ever been in that situation where somebody presents something or responds in a way and there's nothing so obvious that you can put your finger on. You can't say, aha, a lie or a
Mm-hmm.
something like that. There's nothing there, but there's something off.
Yeah.
And when I work with teams, I always talk about this, and it's no offense to used car salespeople, but it's a great reference point, and everybody can seem to relate to it. When a person shows up and says something or acts in a manner that doesn't line up with what they're thinking or feeling,
Mm-hmm.
which we will never know, we can't
Mm-hmm.
tell. But
Mm-hmm.
when there's an incongruency there,
Yeah.
we on the receiving end typically get a feeling. And if you have a high EQ, if you're very tuned into people, generally you'll sense it pretty quick. But
Mm-hmm.
that lack of alignment between what you're doing and saying and thinking and feeling, that's what lands. And that's where and then that all of a sudden that tension appears.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't go away. It just lives like right, I always say it's right under the surface of the desk.
Yeah.
In any work environment, I can look under there and see all that tension. And all it takes is that one little comment or the posturing or the body
Mm-hmm.
language or the facial expression, and somebody reacts to it. And it's a reaction. It's not even thought. It's
Yeah.
just like a
The
knee-jerk
body
reaction.
revealing, the
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
revealing the truth in a way, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's very much that I think we put on this persona because we don't want people to know what we're actually thinking or
Mm-hmm.
actually feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's lots of reasons for that, I'm sure, and that can go right into social sciences and
Yeah,
an
that's a
endless
whole other
conversation.
podcast
That's
for
a whole
many
other
hours,
show.
probably.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so lots and lots of experience and wisdom today. So we were at the journey where you came into work,
Yeah.
you put your briefcase on your desk, you said, I can't do this anymore. And 2 weeks later, you left.
Yeah.
So then what? What happened then?
Well, then I thought I was far smarter than I was. And I thought, again, I'm just going to go help business owners, get their operations moving in the right direction and get it all tidied up. And it just seemed so easy. And then you get into it, you meet these business owners and you get into the environments. And that was for a couple of years, I was working in contracts, but either the owner themselves were kind of circulating in that space of nothing to see here, folks, right? So all
Mhm.
smoke and mirrors. But when you actually get into it, you realize that there are no systems or there is no process. And the people working there had nothing to connect to. So
There's that
how do
again.
you
Hmm.
develop a culture The culture will develop, I firmly believe this. The culture will develop either if it's by design or by default.
Hmm.
So if you want it to happen by design, you have to be intentional. And you can't be intentional if there's nothing for people to connect to.
Yeah. Well, there's this interesting tension that you've referred to earlier between, as I'm in my own language, it's around protection and purpose.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
they're they are can be in conflict if they're not aligned, right?
Hmm.
Because
So,
they're not, yeah. So that's what I'm hearing. What I'm curious about is as you were going through your journey, your career learning, if you will,
mhm.
what was informing your work then that's different from now?
Oh, uh, the big difference is experience and time. You know, the genuine learnings that the training, the studying, the mentorship that I was fortunate enough to receive. That's
Mm,
the very kind of transactional aspect of it. But hours in the seat, you know,
mhm,
the time that you spend investing in environments, in people, in yourself,
mhm,
and recognizing your own operating and then seeing it reflected back to you from others, it takes time. And if I had all the learnings and all the tools that I have now, if I had that 20 years ago, I don't think I would have had the success that I have now. I
say
don't
more about
believe
that.
I don't believe that I would have been able to just execute based on an equation or a transaction. If this, then that. There's so much nuance in the work of corporate culture, and there's so much nuance in conflict resolution. That is about being able to reference back to that time. That's real empathy, where you see a person responding in a way
Mm,
or saying things, and you need to crawl right alongside them and connect through your own like experience. That that doesn't happen from a book. Um,
yeah, connecting through your own life experience. I'm
yeah.
curious about this
Mm,
because you have developed a sense of very strong empathy for what it
mhm,
means to, you already had an experience of what it means to be in conflict
mhm.
and avoiding it. Um, what happened in your journey that helped you go from avoidance to embracing empathy or
Mhm.
conflict rather?
I had an experience. First of all, I will say it's never one thing. It's not an event or
Hmm.
um, I never had that happen. A very transformational experience. I'll speak to two. Uh, I was fortunate enough to meet somebody who is a very successful financier, let's say, raised a lot of money for public companies. Um, and he looked at me one day and told me that I was like a deer in the woods about to be
Mm.
shot. And
Ooh.
yeah, and so it was like, ooh, that stings a little bit because I thought I was putting on a great performance. I was tough as nails. But he saw right through that, and he
Hmm.
spent um, time that he really didn't need to,
Mm.
and talked to me,
Hmm.
um, and just allowed me to ask questions,
Hmm.
challenged me with my those knee-jerk reactions when you're young and figure you got the world in the palm of your hand. And I said something I was working on, and I said, so I'm really excited. He goes, oh, Shannon, give me a, you're excited about everything all the time. Um, which is true. And that's something that I'm really grateful for. But also, his messaging was, what are you going to do about it? And how are you going to do it? So I was fortunate enough to have the lessons that I learned from him still stay with me today. And we didn't spend a lot of time, but it was time he really didn't need to give me. So I'm grateful for that. And it also compounded when I had an experience in an environment. I came in as an HR manager and displaced an acting manager. And at that time, I'm embarrassed to say almost, I took the attitude of it's business, like
Mm,
I'm going to operate in a manner that you don't. And I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for, a fixed period of time, and you'll come back. It'll be fine. This individual was moved to the back of the building, was removed from her role, but she still served a function of her role and was really just given some gentle words, but she would have known. That would have hurt. That would have been a
yeah.
really horrible thing to receive. I was there for 2 years, and at the end of the 2 years, the company had to go through a transition. And I was helping with the transition at that point, which wasn't a positive experience for anybody.
Mm,
Her and I we had to align on some things to get the job done. And it started to become very clear to me that I really did not handle the situation with a lot of kindness and consideration for how it must have felt to be on the receiving end of that. And I apologized to her, and she didn't accept my apology. And that sucked. So in that moment, I just remember saying, I'm very sorry for how this happened and my part in it. I think I could have handled it better. And I'm sure it wasn't easy to be on the receiving end of it.
hmm.
And she just looked at me and shrugged her shoulders and she said, yeah, well, it's done, isn't it? And walked away. And I just thought that I will never forget that because it wasn't untrue and it wasn't
Mm,
undeserved. And I thought, I don't ever want to be a person who makes a person feel so dismissed or so discarded. And I, I, I may have at times, but it's never been lost on me. And that was very pivotal of
yeah.
going, if I'm going to work in culture, I'm going to work in culture in a manner that is aligned with how I want to feel at the end of every day.
Ah,
And if I can't provide that to others, I have no business being in this work.
how I want to feel every day.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's it's interesting. Thank you for sharing that story. I think
Hmm.
it's very interesting how um, as we have, what I'm hearing is that you shared you had the awareness,
Hmm.
you apologized, and it wasn't received. And what I'm hearing is the fact that it wasn't received was made the lesson more powerful for you. Is that what I'm
Very
hearing?
much. Very much. Yeah. Yeah. It made it powerful and it made it one of those, I don't know if you've ever had those moments in your career where you're like, oh, kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, that evolution that you go through and you start to see the common denominator in your life and that the only person that can change that is you.
Yeah,
Knowing that the memory of me and working with me created that type of response, I wasn't proud of that.
right.
And again, there's sometimes that will happen in business.
Yeah,
Sometimes that's sometimes you just have to sit in it.
yeah.
But if it's something within my control, I
Hmm.
will do what I can to soften those edges so the blow isn't as hard.
Hmm.
Um, but it also takes two, right? So a person
Yeah.
has to be willing to receive and collaborate for collaboration to actually happen.
For healing,
Yeah.
especially, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
for that collaboration and healing to happen.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, pivotal moment for you. And I'm thinking back to the little 8-year-old girl.
Oh, yeah. She was sweet.
I'm sure. I'm sure she was. To
Yeah.
the woman who became, I'm here for a fixed time and I'm here to do a job.
Yeah.
To the woman who had this profound learning on the other side that
Yeah.
created an exponentially bigger awareness of empathy. Is that what I'm
Hmm. Yeah.
hearing?
Yeah. This is all really um, the interesting part that I reflect on often is this is kindergarten stuff. It's so much more complex than that, but really, we all just want to go to whatever sandbox and play nicely
Yeah.
and have a good experience.
Well, that's what you said. You said when people are happy and connected,
Yeah.
or actually, you said when people are not happy and connected, they get feisty.
They get feisty and they're good. And yeah, that sandbox becomes a bit of a war zone.
Right. Yeah.
But these are very simple things. It gets complicated based on emotion. It gets complicated due to the complexities of business and transactions. What do people
Absolutely.
value? What's important to them? What are they fighting for?
Hmm.
And if it's not important to you, then why not relinquish it? Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, the key things that keep coming up in this is these ideas of the protective, going back to the protective
Mhm.
mechanism and the purposeful intention or
Yeah.
focus, right? And
Hmm.
when those are not in when they're in conflict with one another or not aligned. And what I'm sort of playing with is the idea that happy and connected.
Yeah.
Happy from the protective space would be safe,
Hmm.
secure,
Yeah.
feeling like we're valued,
Yeah.
just feeling like our humanness is okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can be our
Entirely.
authentic self, right? And
Yeah.
really show up. And then the connected part is the purposeful intent or feeling like we are a valuable human to the world in some way. We're contributing in meaningful ways.
Hmm.
Is that resonating for you?
It is. The way I frame it up in a lot of the work that I do is people typically, first of all, we all matter, right? It's not for one human being to say to another
Mm-hmm.
whether they matter or not in terms of their existence. We all matter because we're here.
Mm-hmm.
That's an inside job. That is not for somebody else to determine for any
Mm-hmm.
of us. But mattering in the context of your work, that's culture.
Yeah.
And that is the part where I've been there many times myself, where you just wonder, would it matter if I was here or not?
Mm-hmm.
Am I making a difference? Would they even notice?
Right.
Aside
Right.
from discipline or compliance or any of that, would my sitting at my desk really matter?
Yeah.
And then you get into that friction of everybody's replaceable
Mm-hmm.
compared to you
Mm-hmm.
really matter in this organization.
You know what? You're actually reflecting back to the hero to zero journey and
Yep.
speaking actually about your first experience in financial services
Yeah.
at not feeling like you matter,
Yeah.
right? Because it was a transaction-based business and you're thinking they're not going to care if I'm not a hero, then I'm a zero, right?
Hmm. And
And
it was a great training ground for that. I wouldn't, I mean,
yeah.
good Lord, I wouldn't choose to go back there with what I know now. But I did get some very valuable life lessons in that environment. And
Mm-hmm.
I had some really brutal experiences where they, froze my trading account and, put some really steep stipulations because they didn't like what one of my clients did. And
Mm-hmm.
it literally, you have no power
Mm-hmm.
unless you're doing exactly what it is that they need you to do, which is generate revenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I understand that
Mm-hmm.
cognitively, I get it,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not what makes me happy. That's
Right.
not what gives me connection, um,
Yeah.
and never has. And I think it just took me a while of practicing that and learning those lessons to get to the place of like, oh, this actually is not these are not my people.
Yeah.
This is not
And
my
that's
place.
Yeah, exactly. And you're
Yeah.
really speaking to culture. I see this a lot in the work that I do because as you
Mhm.
work with teams, I work with individual entrepreneurial
Yeah.
service providers, right? And I
Yeah.
do work with a lot of people in the financial industry, actually.
Mhm.
Um, and it's interesting because all the things we're talking about here
Yeah.
are reasons that advisors and those professionals struggle at times
Mm,
with finding their authentic self
I
and
bet.
being and creating those highly connected relationships with clients and whatnot. And they struggle with the same things. They
Yeah.
struggle with things like protection and purpose. And
Yes.
how do I protect the things that are important to me as a human for who I
Mhm.
want to be and serve my clients and all of that. The good news is, Shannon, that these days that potential is actually there.
Yeah.
So the
Fantastic. Good to
industry has
hear.
changed
Good to
somewhat. So
hear.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do that work. So the work that you're doing with teams and whatnot, I'm doing with
Yeah.
individuals. But the themes are very similar. And I
Hmm.
think it's such a, and as humans, ultimately, it really does come down to the authentic self
Yeah.
and how we are valued in the world. And that's it. Whether,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter what the environment is, whether it's our family for you as an 8-year-old girl,
Yeah.
or whether we're in an entrepreneurial setting like your financial advisory world, or now working with teams or in a large organization,
Absolutely.
right? The themes are
Yeah.
all very similar and very human themes.
Yeah.
So, as you're thinking about the work that you're doing now,
Mm. Yeah.
thinking more about the future,
Yeah.
what lights you up like a
Oh,
firecracker?
it's the moment when I see somebody who is, and I meet a lot of people in my work that are very, um, how can I describe it? They're just very resistant. They really think I'm going to be there to make their life difficult and tell them what to do. Um, it's quite the opposite. Um, and it takes a while, but it's when I get to a place with people where there's almost like a moment where it's a physical response that they have to the awareness that they've just gained.
Mm,
And it's never the same. It's not because I say anything so magical. It's context. It's timing, it's context,
mhm,
it's the whether the person's ready to hear it or not. That's what I'm always searching for. I'm searching for that moment where I see somebody go, "Oh, I get it." Or, "Oh, you're actually here to support, not make
mm,
me bad and wrong."
mhm,
Right? And it's
mhm.
because I believe when that moment happens, that's the beginning of the shift.
Yeah.
And that shift is what really serves the connection that
Mhm,
is often missing
mhm.
in cultures. And it's not a destination either, right? Like helping people like middle managers and even executive level realize this isn't work where you start on this date and by this date you're going to have a whole and complete culture that's healthy and just absolutely banging it out. Like it doesn't work that way. It's an ongoing evolution and you're going to have steps forward, but you're also going to have steps backwards.
Mhm.
And that's the evolution of it. It's not a straight line and it's never going to be finished.
So as you're thinking about the sparkle in your eye
Yeah.
and you're going to work and thinking,
Yeah.
I love what I'm doing and I get to
Yeah.
do this again today,
Yeah.
what is it that is most um, exciting for you? What's the outcome or the thing that just melts your heart, says, I want to come back and do more of this?
When I see people grow and they don't even see it yet,
Uh,
they don't even see it. And it's a growth and an evolution of um, something much deeper than the transactional part of their role.
there's that word again. This is
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It's the difference between transaction and actual embracing and holding, like embracing conflict, as I say, when I speak, it's not as kumbaya as it sounds.
Yeah.
It takes courage. It takes a lot,
Hmm.
and not because it's a winning thing, because it's actually quite the opposite. It's that vulnerability piece. So
Hmm.
if somebody's actually leaning into that,
Hmm.
what brings me the most like, oh, I did good today is when I see the people that are so resistant just soften a little and it's moving the needle.
Yeah.
It's not going from, very resistant and abrasive and even combative to kumbaya. It's not
Yeah.
that. It's always moving the needle. And sometimes you can't. And
Hmm.
it's being okay with that because
Hmm.
when that needle moves, it's the best ever. Yeah.
Yeah. There is resistance to change, isn't there? There's resistance because that protective armor can be pretty well established.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah.
It can be
Yeah.
pretty well established. And
Definitely.
as we experience the resistance, I see that a lot in my work as well.
Yeah, I bet.
Um,
I bet.
it's like, oh, in it shows up as I can't do that, I'll lose clients, or I can't ever say that, or I can't be that way because it will
Yeah.
impact my credibility or it'll impact my brand or my reputation, my professionalism. So we hear and see similar things.
Hmm.
And when the authentic self shows up, from
Yeah.
your perspective,
Yeah.
what changes?
Mm. I think there's a lot more compassion that shows up. I think there's a lot more compassion for self, but also if you're going to do something that ruffles feathers, there's an acceptance in that compassion. It's like, I know you
Mm,
don't like this, and I know it's upset you,
hmm
and I'm doing it
hmm
because it's my decision to be made, and
hmm
I'm going to sit in it. So it's self-compassion for being that person that's going to feel kind of maybe a little bit icky with that discomfort of everything, but also compassion for the person that might be completely, filled with rage and
hmm
on the attack,
hmm
and having compassion for that. So I think that's
mm.
something that comes up for me is when a person's ready to do that, it's acceptance, but there's a level of compassion that wasn't there before.
That's lovely. There's a question on the tip of my tongue as we're winding up a little bit here.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm thinking about from where you sit today,
Mm.
your compassion for your 8-year-old self.
Oh.
Mhm.
Hmm.
What wisdom or compassion might you share with her from your
Oh,
perspective now?
that's a good question. I would share that everything that you've been taught is true. So you don't need to fight it. And fighting isn't bad when it's something that means the world to you. So be really, really clear on what matters and fight for that.
That's lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, because avoiding it doesn't work. I proved that.
Mm. And I think the thing that is really important here to emphasize, at least from my ears,
Hmm.
is it's fighting, know what really matters,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the fight that I'm hearing in the language you're using, the fight, when you're fighting for something that matters,
Hmm.
what does that look like when it's done in a healthy way, Shannon?
It's not, there isn't a threatening tone to it. It's easy. It's based in curiosity, not combat. There's a very distinct difference in how that shows up physiologically. And I don't I don't believe enough credit is given in the moment working with people
Mm,
to really tap into that physical response system that we have.
yeah.
When you're in a place of curiosity, it shows up very different in the body than if you're going into combat.
hmm
Hmm.
with the conflict and
Yeah.
the armor up.
Yep. All those things.
hmm
It's I see it a lot. The combative nature of driven people in aggressive environments is very common. And I understand it. I was there myself. I've been there. And there is the other thing I'll say is it's never this the work on yourself is never done either because I fall into all the traps,
Yeah.
just like everybody else.
Yeah.
The when you're annoyed and you make a passive aggressive comment or you're proving a point and you just
hmm
fight to make it be heard.
Right.
And I'm grateful that I've learned enough to know when I'm doing it, and I can usually catch myself, but not all the time.
Yeah.
Not all
Well,
the time.
to your point, you said, what are you fighting for? And
Yeah.
sometimes that's a great question for someone else, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's a great question for ourselves.
100%.
Sometimes we forget.
Yeah, and there's also moments where I sit there and going, I am being very unreasonable. I don't
Oh,
I have to figure out what this is about.
yeah,
Um, and that's part of the fun I have with it is going, ooh, yeah, far from perfect.
right. And that's the
Far from
embracing,
anything.
right?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
the fun and the embracing and showing up with, oh, this is a
Yeah.
curious experience that
Yeah.
is worthy of some exploration,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah. Or you respond to something and you're like, well, that was completely out
Yeah.
of line. And then,
Yeah.
and I don't like having to go and clean up my own mess,
Right.
right? I don't want to do that. I want there to be no mess,
Mm-hmm.
but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
It happens more often than I care to admit. But I think part of it is being vulnerable enough and showing people that it can be done with grace and still be intact
Yeah.
as a whole and complete human. It's just part of the experience.
Yeah. I think, we started with some words at the beginning, values like courage,
Yeah,
curiosity, and connection.
yeah,
And here we find ourselves speaking about those through
yeah,
the through this conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
As we're just finishing up, what is something that really stands out for you from this conversation that you might like our listeners to remember?
Mm. I think it's really important for everybody to remember that the work of culture is not something that you just do and finish.
Mm.
It's people. And in a world where we have technology moving at great speed. AI is powerful, but it isn't human.
Hmm.
Um, and we still have to deal with each other. So the investment in culture is really about the long game, and
Yeah,
it's worth every investment you can make because you get more. If it boils down to productivity, you will find more productivity in your environment when the culture is healthy and aligned.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, for
Thank
those who would
you.
like to connect with you and find you, where
Yeah.
might they be able to connect with you,
Yeah.
Shannon?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn, my
Okay.
personal profile, Shannon Pearson.
Hmm.
ReformIQ is also on LinkedIn and reformiq.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll make sure those links are available. I want to
Wonderful.
thank you so much for today's conversation.
Thank
Lots of
you.
clarity, lots of
Good.
empathy, lots of lovely learning today. Really appreciate
Good.
you. And thanks so
Thank
much for
you.
everything.
Thanks, Michelle.
All righty. We'll see you soon. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Shannon. Bye for now.